here we go again. Time is up and I'm calling up my friends. Ain't no wonder why, ain't no wonder I too. Here we go again. Call me up and you wanna be my friend. I'm the one you ride, I'm the one you ride to. If you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out. Look, if you don't wanna change, ain't no place to hide, ain't no one to run to. If you don't wanna change, I can help you out, 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 I can help you out.
I was angry before, but I circled the drain in my mind. I can't find, don't let the sun go down. Don't let the sun go down. I was angry before, but I circled the drain in my mind. I can't find, don't let the sun go down. Don't let the sun go down. Don't let the sun go. Let's go.
I get lost inside my thoughts, and when I start to think, oh, the time how close it starts to end up on the brink. I tried so hard, but all these scars, they cut so deep I bleed. I fell so fast from heaven, it's like someone clipped my wings. Now I'm falling, and I can't see the ground. this gravity, it keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. I forgive the pain you gave to me so long ago. Sleepless nights I laid awake just begging to let go. I almost got to suicidal thoughts, but you stepped in. An angel sent from heaven showed me how to live again. Now I'm falling and I can't see the ground. Can we stop this gravity? It keeps bringing me down. I can't breathe and I don't wanna die. Can we stop this gravity? 'Cause I don't wanna say goodbye. My love, I'm gone. I need to be strong. The darkness had tried to swallow me. Some things I fall, but I hear your call. I pray I don't hit the ground. Gravity. 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 Gravity.
When I'm lonely in the dark, I know you are with me, yeah. Don't you see that I need you so much? Don't you see that I love you so much? Oh na 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 na, oh na 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 na, darling, I need your love. Oh na 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 na, oh na 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 na, darling, I need your love.
Good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi, everyone. Welcome to GhostMac webinar series this morning. Before we get started, let me introduce myself as the MC for today. I am Jenny from GhostMac. Our topic for today is your career is a marathon, not a sprint. As you may or may not know, you will learn a lot about preparing for your future life and career, as well as learning the steps to secure a fulfilled life. I would like to first and foremost congratulate every one of you who have taken the wonderful initiative to learn a new skill, not only for yourself, but also for the good of your future journey. Before we kick off with our presenter today, a few quick reminders so that we could learn and enjoy today's webinar without many interruptions. Firstly, please remember to mute your mic so that your secrets are not being heard by all of us. Secondly, please show your love and encouragement to our presenter, who have worked very hard to prepare this webinar especially for you. After that, kindly check on your microphones and speaker setting in case if you cannot hear our presenter voice. You can check on the audio setting button, which is located at the right bottom side. Or else, if you cannot solve the problem, you can right away drop a message in our chat box and our technical team will guide you. Next, we would like to invite all the participants to join on our Global Talent Network GTN Telegram group. As you can see, we have provided the QR code for you to join on our Global Talent Network GTN Telegram group. The main objective of the GTN Telegram group is to learn, interact, and participate in the webinars and activities conducted by peers, industry, and leaders. And also, get access to the webinar links, mentoring, resources, and support, as well as the material of presentations and the webinar recording link will be shared to the GTN Telegram group. Plus, you may get information for our upcoming events and webinars. So kindly join us on our Global Talent Network GTN Telegram group for the updates. With that, let me introduce our speaker and special guest for today, Mr. Jermaine and Miss Natalie.
Hello.
Please give some online claps for our wonderful speaker. So, Mr. Jermaine, are you there?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Let's see. Thank you so much. If I can, I would love for more people to show your faces. If you don't mind, it would be a nice experience to see everybody. And I promise we're really friendly, both Natalie and I. First and foremost, thank you, Danny, and thank you, Michael, for inviting us. Today, I was supposed to come here by myself and do a 90-minute conversation about career, but I had a chat with my good friend Natalie, who is a software engineer at NASA's lab. It's called JPL, and so she agreed to join and give us some of her perspective of her early career. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I look at this session as a time to get some new ideas and share some of the things that I've done in my pretty early career. I just turned 30. And I know for some of you younger people, 30 feels very old because when I was 22, I thought 30 was done. It's all gone. Life is over. But I promise you, when you get to around 30, it feels just the same as when you are whatever age you're at. So I actually, like many of you living in Malaysia, I spent a lot of years in Malaysia, and that's how I met Michael. Actually, my parents are friends with Michael many years ago. I think they went to university together. And so, and when I was in Form 4, and Natalie, that would be about 15 years old. I was in Form 4. I had such bad grades. I was basically failing every class. And my parents was like, I think you're not going to pass the SPM. Is that what it is? SPM, where you take in Form 5, or is it no longer? So yeah, I'm
It's the
definitely
same,
not going to
yes.
pass that. And so my parents said, we're going to send you back to the United States, where I was born. And so I was very lucky. I got a second chance. And when I got back to the United States, got back to LA, I took this test where everybody had to take to get into high school. And I did so bad on the test that I was placed in basically 3 or 4 grades before me. And they told me, yeah, we don't think you're going to graduate high school. So I don't think you're going to go to college or university because you don't know any math. You don't know how to write a proper essay. You don't know anything. So what do you expect to do? And so going back into coming back to the US, it was kind of a challenging time because it was supposed to be my new beginning. I was failing in school. I was always blacklisted. I would always testing my Malay words here. Actually, how do you say skip school? It starts with a P. I forgot that word, but you guys know what I mean.
Ponteng.
So I would Ponteng, yes, I would skip school all the time and get in trouble all the time. And so when I got to the US, I thought, all right, this is finally my turn to do life correctly. And the first thing that happened was I was told that I was really bad and I had to take classes that I really don't want to take. And then the second thing that happened was I was bullied a lot because I was the new kid in school. And I had like really long hair. Like now it's cool because K-pop is cool now, but back in those days, you get bullied a lot. And it took me a long time to realize that I actually can do anything, and I really didn't have any option. And so what happened was I just studied really hard and did all the right things that I had to do, and eventually went to college. But I want to skip a little bit in my process of what happened because I think the career part is what I wanted to focus on. So I did end up going to university. I think it's at the time when I told even my cousins that I was going to go to this university, they were like, well, you should aim lower because you have really bad grades and you probably won't get in. And at the end, I actually did get into this university, University of Southern California. It's USC. It's one of I think it's top 25 in the country, in the United States. And when I got in, it felt like a validation. It was like, okay, now the world says that you are smart enough to go into a university, but I didn't feel any different. I feel like I'm still the same person. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. And so when I was in university, I never really paid attention in class. I always had a startup idea. I was always building something, and I had a lot of hobbies. I like to travel as much as I can. So when I was in university at 19 years old, I was working in a startup. And if a lot of you may remember, Snapchat at the time was brand new. This is 2011. Nobody in Malaysia was using Snapchat at the time. The founder of Tinder was my classmate. Well, we have the same marketing professor, and a lot of you would know this app. And, my first startup in college went bankrupt. And then I went back to university. And as soon as I graduated, I was like, well, I don't really want to work for anybody because it felt like I had so many ideas and nobody would really see it the way that I would. And I was also too rebellious. I was thinking, I got to try all these things before I finally settle down for a job. And so I met this guy. We started a creative agency. And what we did in the creative agency was just to help people design Snapchat filters, produce videos, and make ads. And we did that for 4 years. But I felt, even though at the time we made no money for the first 2 years, I think I was driving for Uber for maybe 2 years. I think I had 5,000 5 stars review because I like to talk and I talk to everybody. And so when you drive and you talk in Uber, usually you get a good tip or 5 stars. And I think at the time, I just wanted to do anything but to exchange my time for money. I wanted to pay the bills in all ways possible except for to get a job. Um, and this whole time, what I was able to learn was that I was able to basically only work for 6-7 hours a day driving around and then spend the rest of the time doing anything that I find interesting. And it was the freedom that gave me a lot of ideas and a lot of excitement about life. And then later on in 2016, we got a president in the United States. His name is Donald Trump. And I thought, wow, I have all the skills about storytelling and about digital communications, and I'm not using it to do anything meaningful. Like, why is my country, the US, so divided? And I think at this point, I actually already know Natalie. That's the time that I met Natalie. And I decided, okay, I'm gonna take some time off, stop doing all the marketing things I'm doing. And I decided to go into politics. And so I took a few months off. I came back and I said, all right, now I have this new interest, politics. I have no experience. I have no idea what people did in politics, but I knew I had some skills and those skills must be useful. So I emailed a lot of people. I talked to a lot of people. And at the end, I found this guy. His name is John Chung. He's an Asian American. Like me, he didn't speak perfect English at the time, and he worked started from the bottom. But at the time, he was the state treasurer of California. So he handles all the money that California has, and it's a lot of money. I think I don't know, it's a lot of money. And so I basically asked someone on his team, and said, hey, I have no skills and no knowledge in politics, but I know how to talk to people. I can organize pretty well. I can sell. I can ask people for money. And it turns out that those skills are pretty useful in fundraising. And on top of the fact that I also speak multiple languages. So that's what happened. I went from zero political experience to work on a governor's campaign in the state of California, a campaign that is pretty high profile. And I spent about a year and a half doing that. So we lost the campaign. And then now I have to decide, okay, do I want to stay in politics, or what do I want to do? What is interesting? And I decided, with my experience in politics and the fact that the world is, in the US, we have this challenge where people cannot focus and people are afraid of mathematics. I'm afraid of mathematics because I never paid attention in class. So I decided maybe I need to do something there. And so I, again, followed what was interesting to me. And, we found this company, this lady who is the #1 abacus master in the world. And she has this way of processing number, and she taught most of the world's greatest mental mathematician. And so the idea was, we're going to build something, maybe an app, maybe an education program together. And from there, we would try to solve America's fear of math. And so that's what Tactile Brain is. The idea that we can use tactile, audio, and visual to create programs and build educational programs to help people. And so that brings me up to about a few months ago. I had actually since left the company. And along the way, it sounds like every time I talk about my career, in the beginning, it just sounds like I'm unfocused and I did a lot of really random things. And if I had to write a resume, it would seem like my skills were not really convertible. But what happened was, when I look back at my resume, it actually seemed like more like a bucket list to me. It's always the things that I found really interesting. And even without any experience, I was able to find a way to do it. And Recently, I've been doing this new thing on Shopify. We've been selling some products related to dogs, and we've built up about 1 million followers on Instagram. And we've been doing e-commerce. And so once again, I'm learning something new. So throughout this process, I think there's always been a theme that has kind of come to me. In the beginning, I wanted to prove to people so badly that I am worth something. So the judgments of my friends, of family friends, and I always thought, oh, I have to do better. I have to do more. I have to get to a certain point. And I always felt like I was behind. So I had to always achieve more. I think maybe it's only the last few years where I finally understood that in reality, the only thing that I really should care about is how do I make sure that my potential is not wasted and that I am okay with what I'm doing. And actually, I pulled up this book that I had many years ago. I saw this book. It's called The Long View. And I'll type this out later. But it's really to think that when do you retire? If you think you're going to retire at 70, take 70 and minus your age, that is how many years you have. And so the thought that I was behind at 22 was a little bit crazy, because I can fail maybe 5 more times and I would still be pretty young. And so when I finally understood that, really understood that, the fact that I can fail at many more things and I would still be young enough to keep trying something new, was so freeing for me. It made me realize that it really doesn't matter at what point of my career it doesn't seem like it's successful, quote unquote successful, as long as I know I'm on my own journey and focus on learning, do what I enjoy, that would kind of get me there. And so that is kind of the background story of me. What would be super helpful in this session is actually if you have any questions that are very selfish. So something that you have in your mind, for example, I really want to do this thing, but everybody around me say I should do something else, but I don't know how to think about the situation. You can write it in the chat. And if you don't want to write it in the chat, you can email me. My email is there, and I won't say your name. And I will share that, because what happens is sometimes we realize that we talk about our problems as if they're only ours. But what we don't realize is a lot of people are actually going through very similar challenges. A lot of us are thinking about the same things. A lot of us are thinking about, oh, well, if I did this and it doesn't work, how would, what should I do? Or I have this really big idea, but it seems so impractical. What should I do? And something like that. And so if you have any questions like that, I would love for you to send it to me. Don't worry about typing it in proper grammar. As long as I understand, just do it as fast as you want to. But I really want to get those in there. And let's see. The reason why I brought Natalie here today is because Natalie actually and I met in a very interesting way. I have many hobbies. One of them is photography and video. And so in my hometown in Pasadena, there is this really big parade that goes on every year. So this parade is, it's like a show. It's on TV. It's broadcasted in about 80 countries in 40 languages. And many years ago, when I was being bullied and I was in high school, there's one thing that I knew how to do. I knew how to play the piano. And so I somehow joined the band, a very nerdy thing to do. If I wasn't bullied enough, I was going to get bullied more by being in the band, but it didn't matter. I found some friends there and I was going to march in this parade. And this parade is 5 miles, so 8 kilometers. It's a really long parade. But just a few weeks before that, I actually broke my ankle playing basketball. And I couldn't march in this parade. And so then I found out that, oh, I guess I couldn't be in this parade but they have an internship, which is brand new. And so I decided to apply to the internship, and that's how I joined this organization that puts on the parade. And many years later, because I love telling stories, I love taking photos, doing videos, I joined a committee that selected what we call the Royal Court. So in this parade every year, 7 young women are selected, interviewed, selected based on, well, actually, Natalie, you should answer this later. I'll add this because I don't remember. But Natalie was one of those princesses who were selected to represent the Rose Parade, the city. And that's how we met. And that was 5-6 years ago now. And she went into college. She studied computer science, and now she's a software engineer. So I figured I would bring a different perspective, a little bit younger, closer to your age, and for her to come and join us. So why don't we do that? Natalie, can you unmute?
Yes. Yeah, is my audio okay?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thumbs up. Let's go with it.
Right, we can hear you
Okay,
well.
great. Great,
Okay,
thank you.
Natalie, first of all, how do you get selected, and what is the Royal Court?
So the Royal Court is selected by the Queen and Court Committee on the Tournament of Roses, and they look for a variety of qualities. They look at your scholastic achievement, public speaking, and poise. Those are probably the top qualities that they look for. And the process has 4 rounds. The first round is you have 15 seconds to tell the selection committee why you're trying out for the Royal Court. And then as you progress through the rounds, then they ask you questions. What are the positive and negative byproducts of social media? If you could volunteer for one organization, what would it be? There were about 771 young women from the Southern California Pasadena district. And ultimately they pick 7 young women, and all of us were seniors in high school. So we were about 18 years old at that time.
Cool. Actually, I don't even know how I would explain the scale of this thing, but basically the people that were selected in this usually goes out and do pretty good things in life, and they're promising young women with good careers. Natalie's just one of the shining example. But let's get back to the topic of your career. Natalie, you want to introduce yourself, and then I'll ask you a few questions?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Petrosian. I'm a software engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I went to UC Santa Cruz and got my bachelor's in computer science. And now I've been working at the lab for about 6 months now. December 21st will be 6 months. I absolutely love my job, and I'm really happy to be here.
Cool. So what would you have told yourself at the beginning of college, knowing what you know now? So you've gone through 4 years of university, and obviously you got a job, you work in the field that you studied in, but knowing what you know now, what would you tell Natalie 4 years ago?
Natalie, 4 years ago. So I started in fall of 2017, and I brought in a lot of my work habits and studying from high school as well. I really wanted to hit the books and do as best as I can. Looking back now, I wish I had gone out a little bit more, explore Santa Cruz, and hang out with my friends a lot. I was always concerned, if I miss this study period, how am I going to do on this quiz? But looking back, those memories of going out to the restaurants and things outside of the university was a lot of fun. I would still say it was a good balance, but I still say I wish I did go out a little bit more. I got much better at that though. Once I hit my 3rd year of college, I was a little bit more adventurous. I wish I'd done that a little bit sooner. So that would be something I would look back and tell 18-year-old Natalie.
I'm pretty sure I was one of those people that told you, hey, you don't have to study as hard.
Yes, you were one of those people.
Geometry doesn't actually matter when you're at NASA or JPL.
Looking back at a lot of the curriculum, I assume computer science is pretty much the same across international borders. Yes, I'm not necessarily using everything that I learned in calculus. I may not also be learning about or applying things that I learned on the theoretical side of software engineering and computer science, but nonetheless, it still provides you with those foundation, the building blocks of it, and it does make transitioning into the field easier. But there is always going to be a learning curve in software engineering. The first 6 months and year, even so on, you're always going to be learning in engineering and software development. So that taught me to never shy away from asking questions when I'm at the workplace. It's okay not to know everything, because in a few years, there could be a brand new programming languages that takes over our mobile phones and the way we interact with interfaces and consume data. So we're always going to be learning that way.
So you talked about something that you would have told yourself to do more of. What about something you feel like you've done right that really helped you in your first year at work, or even help you get a job?
Sure. I think, well, of course, always wanting to go for the best, applying myself, that really comes naturally when you are in a field that you're passionate about. I really liked building things, creating something from scratch, being transparent about not knowing something right away. I was very lucky to also spend my summers as a college student at JPL as well. So that was my first experience in the workforce, but I was also still in college. I was 19. So you would always rather ask your supervisors those questions ahead of time, because you never want to deliver something that could have been fixed with a question. What I found with my peers, even at JPL, sometimes you don't want to ask those questions because you want to seem like you know everything, but that's part of the learning process, and it's always better to ask questions and be forthcoming that way.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely very important. Yeah, I think one thing that I struggled with early on is that I felt like I needed to know everything about everything. And it wasn't only until recently that I feel like being curious is actually a very good trait. And I'll give you guys an interesting story about being curious. My brother is 21 years old, and he has recently, if you've looked at internet lately, everybody's buying some sort of coin, like Dogecoin or something like that. And as the big older brother, the responsible older brother, my 21-year-old brother came to me and he said, "Hey, you should look at this because I think it's very interesting." And I just told him, you know what, you're just a kid. You don't really know what's going on in cryptocurrency. This is just a joke. And he proved me wrong. 2 months later, he was right. Whatever he chose, actually, developers are working on it, and the price went up a lot, and he made a lot of money. And the older brother in me realized that, maybe I can learn how to not judge him and just listen to what he's telling me, because perhaps there is something there that I just don't see. And so I think this is kind of coming with age too, to learn how to just be more curious about the things and not just think that I know everything. Natalie, in your really early career as a software engineer, what steps are you taking to make sure that, or to check in with yourself that this is something you want to do, or if this leads to a fulfilling or happy life?
Sure. So I'm 23. So naturally, I'm thinking, what does a fulfilled life mean? We may never know exactly what it means, or it's subjective to individuals. I check, am I happy? How often am I stressed? Am I calm? Am I relaxed? And what that means to me is putting the best foot forward, doing the best I can at my workplace, and also having this balance of checking in with my friends and family, being wise with finances. That makes me feel secure in my life. So that would be steps that I take for a fulfilled life. Volunteerism is also really important to us. And so that is something that I check in to ensure that I am having a fulfilled life.
Cool. I mean, I think this is, I can tell you guys that not all 23-year-olds think like Natalie. Natalie is a very mature, one of the more mature ones that I know, and very thoughtful. She's one of the few 23-year-olds that have talked to me about investment strategy, about retirement planning, which I didn't even think about until just a few years. So it's certainly something, you know, that I think it requires thoughtfulness and I think guidance in your life. Natalie, if you had one advice to give someone who, I'm trying to think like what is like a useful tidbit that you've learned from work so far? Like what is something that, you know, okay, what is something that you thought work would be when you're in college, and then now you're working, you're like, oh, that's completely wrong. you can take your time.
It's a difficult question, only because I'm looking back at my internships. I had some of that going in. Of course, this is for a much longer amount of time, so I was fortunate enough to work at the same place I am now. But essentially something that didn't meet my expectations, or I thought, oh, this is the case. Yeah, that's a hard one for me.
We can come back.
Okay,
this is to show you guys I didn't prepare Natalie for all the questions. This is live interviewing, so she needs to think on her feet. Yeah. Hold on. I'm gonna read this question real quick, and then I will. Okay, so this is a very, very common question, and I won't tell your name. Do you think that we should be ourselves in our career, or should we take the advice from relatives or friends? Which one do you think will make career more successful? Can you guys relate to this question? Nod your head if you can. Or is that, I think this is a very common question. And even though I am lucky enough, I am Malaysian Chinese, and I am lucky enough to be born in the US, but you know, we used to also joke that my mom still would love for me to go to Harvard, and my mom still wants to have a doctor at home, and they would love that if I became an engineer and have a very stable job. I think there's this, I think the way to answer this is that you have to know kind of who you are. Self-awareness is probably one of the things that is the greatest gift that I got recently, is to acknowledge whether or not I can live being in disagreement with my parents, or whether or not I can live being in agreement with my parents. So I'll give you an example. If my mom says, okay, no matter what, you have to be a lawyer. Sure, I can probably go study law and become a lawyer and maybe be not very happy about it, or I could be happy, you never know. But would I be okay with the process of being in disagreement with my parents, who I care about a lot? Because what could happen is I think there's two very simple paths in my way. So path number one, I go and become a lawyer, get a job, and I really hate my life. And I have so much anger or resentment towards, oh, mom, why did you make me do this? Because of you, I did this and I'm unhappy. So I don't know about your parents. I'm sure most parents would not like that. The fact that you have this deep anger, even though they come give you advice on a really good intention. The other thing you can do is you can follow your dreams, follow what you are passionate about, and say, hey, mom and dad, I love you, but actually, I really don't say I love you to my parents that often. That's a very American thing. but it's like, hey, parents, I respect what you want me to do, but I feel like I have to do this thing because I'm passionate about it. And I feel the most happy and alive. Like I'm good at this. And let me try to do this for 2 years or 3 years. And let me try. And if I fail, I will do what you think I should do. What would happen at the end is, regardless of what the outcome is, you would have been able to say, okay, I did my best at the circumstances that I have. So it's a very tricky question, because I would say before I was quote unquote successful, even all the years that I was driving for Uber just to build a startup, I'm very lucky. My parents have always supported me. I remember my dad told me one day that I don't know what the right answer is in 2018. I may know what the right answer is in 2005 when I was in this industry. But these days, nobody can tell you what is right or wrong anymore, because things are changing so fast. The fact that we're having this conversation, the fact that you're meeting Natalie, who you would not have met unless we can do a Zoom webinar like this. This is what the world has become. The world has more information, and no matter where you live, as long as if you're here, you have the internet, and you can pretty much learn anything that you want to. And so I would say in the past, let's say, so my sister is a singer, and my sister, and as you know, being a singer is not a very stable job. In the past, we would say, well, if you want to be a singer, you have to have someone recognize you, and you have to, have a breakthrough, and then you get to go on TV or radio. But these days, you have to just be really good. Maybe you go on TikTok and you can become the most famous singer, more famous than anyone who have a label. And so the entire market has changed. And I would say you should be patient and be empathetic. You should understand why your relatives, why people give you advices, and you should hear them, and you should really see where they're coming from. Because, for example, I have had this conversation with my parents. I said, hey, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I can see why you wanted that, because you felt when you came to the US that if you had a law degree, nobody could bully you. You were smart, you can make a lot of money, you have status. But that doesn't mean it's the same for me anymore. It's because you are able to do all these things that you do that I don't have to do it. And so once you understand where the people who's giving you advice are coming from, you can make sure they feel heard, make sure that they know that you heard them, but you just want to do something on your own. And to the person that wrote me that message, if you have a very specific example, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I can't tell you what to do, but I can kind of give you a breakdown on what I think, how people would react if you didn't listen to them and did your own thing. But I can tell you, when you do what you want to do, and even if you fail, you will be happier. You would actually be more fulfilled. Let me reread this question. Hold on. Yeah, so the follow-up question is, do you think we should do what our parents want us to do for a period of time, and we can make the decision for our own way after that? I spoke in Malaysia at a high school in 2013, and this was the question that I got the most. How do you, and it's also the judgment of people around you and people that you care about. I think it depends. So there is a certain level of practicality. For example, you cannot just say, well, we're broke and I'm not going to work because I want to paint. If you're broke, you have to figure out how to not be broke first, and then find a way that you can spend the rest of your time chasing what you want to do. But, it's like, I think the situation is so different, but I would say you can never go wrong following your gut. And if your gut tells you that you should try to do what you want to do now, and just remember, if your parents are still paying for your university, paying for your life, you owe them something. You owe them to try. But if you say, hey, mom and dad, I don't want to listen to you anymore, I want to go do this other thing, then you have to be prepared to tell yourself, okay, I have to now prove to my parents that I can make it, and it's going to be hard. But even though what you do is hard, you are doing it because you love it. hopefully. Otherwise, you really shouldn't be doing it. Okay, I have to follow up with you on this conversation. There's another comment that came in, but from the same person, but I think we have to talk offline on this because it's getting a little bit more, I don't really understand. Okay, Natalie, do you have an answer to that question?
Certain expectations that I had. The differences between my internships and full-time career, they were on different teams. And something that I was not expecting for my very first job is how much of a family we are. There's always that level of professionalism, but you're in a lot of ways, your coworkers do become your family because of how often you iterate and talk to one another. And so they are so easy to talk to, which is what I absolutely love. And it makes me feel much more relaxed at work. The senior engineer is very much my mentor, and he's had 20 years of experience on this team. So he's basically an expert in this field. And so the fact that I came in as the junior developer, he showed me how we do work, and now I'm so thankful for that. And he's also somebody that I can easily talk to as well. So that family environment was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's, I used to think that that's what work is like, where you go to a team and you build something. And then after I've been a CEO, I realized how hard it is to build that. And because I love everybody and I'm close to all my team members, but what I realized at the end was like, oh, well, when you really like somebody, it's really hard to tell them bad news. Because I had to fire someone I really liked. And that was probably the hardest thing I had to do. So anyways, that hopefully you don't have to get there anytime soon. I have a question. If you guys can leave in a comment your age and what are you studying? And just type it in the comments. I just want to get a sense of who's in here. Can you guys comment? I don't know if you can. Oh, there you go, 19. Nice, 18. I would love to be 18 again. So one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about lately is I am interested in fintech and financial tech, and I want to go into financial tech, but in an emerging market. So Africa or Latin America, which means I'm once again leaving my comfort zone and going into something that is completely foreign to me, something that most of the times I wouldn't have friends in these places. And, part of the way I've been looking at this is I wanted to, I wanted to chase something that is meaningful, which in fintech, I'm able to, if I do what I do properly, I can probably help people get out of being poor. And because we see in the last pandemic that a lot of rich people keep getting richer. And so I think that there's this quote that I've read a long time ago that says, if you are brave enough, often enough, at some point you will fail. And it's by Brené Brown, I think. And this is kind of how I've been looking at my career. That if you're brave enough, long enough, and you do things that are hard enough, you will eventually fail. But that's totally worth it. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the comments. Wow, everyone is so young. Now, I know I just say 30 doesn't feel that old, but it does feel old when you're in a room of 100 young people. Michael, do you have any questions for me?
Well, Jimin, thanks, Natalie. Thank you so much. Maybe, Jimin, maybe you want to share with them in terms of what are your challenges when you were trying to have your startup, whether it's for the brain, tactile brain, or whether it's for your first marketing digital agency, so that I believe some of them might want to take on the journey of entrepreneurship, just like you.
Mhm.
So maybe share what are the challenges, what do you learn along the way? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I think the challenge is always different. Like when I was younger, the challenge was, I guess, not knowing where to find resources, not knowing who to ask questions, or not knowing how to start. That was always the challenge in the beginning. I think the challenge later on is, after a few successes, is that people believe in you too much, that when you say something, they think it's going to work, and then they just offer to invest in your idea, but you don't even know if it will work. And that's a different kind of challenge. I would prefer when people doubt you, because when people doubt you, they're critically thinking about what you're telling them. And it's better for them to say no because XYZ than to say, oh, yes, you're so smart, you'll figure it out. And then they just tell you, okay, it's good. So if you have a lot of people telling you no, you have to. So I remember this when I first started doing the creative agency. A lot of people would say, yeah, there's so many creative marketing agencies out there. Why would you do another one? Or you would hear all the criticism. And one thing that I did for a very long time is I cut a very small piece of paper, almost the size of my little AirPods here. And I wrote down 5 to 7 names of the people's opinions that matters. So I always remind myself to look at this paper. Whenever I feel like there were too many negative opinions, I go back to this paper and I remind myself, these are the only 5 names that matters. The rest of them are just noise. And, at some point I had to take my parents out of that paper, because at some point it was too conflicting for me to try to please my parents at the same time needing to build something. And then at some point, of course, I added their names back because their opinions do matter. What I realized is not to remove their name, is to make sure they feel heard, but you critically think if you have to follow. And I think with the startup thing, these days, even compared to 5 years ago, whatever you want to do, you can, because there are resources out there. And there's a very good website that you can use to basically find any information you want. And that's called Google. Like, actually everything you want, maybe YouTube, but you can find everything on Google. And so, there's a really interesting saying in Silicon Valley is you can either live above the API or below the API. And I don't know how many of you know what an API is, but basically it's like, you can either become a user or a driver or a person that uses Uber, or you can be the one coding the Uber, the people who create the thing that everybody else is using. And for a very long time, I've always thought, I want to live above the API. I want to live a life where I'm creating the world that I want to be in. And sometimes all it takes is for you to just look around and have a challenge that you want to solve. And a really simple thing you can do is like, oh, I want to do this faster. I wonder if I can do it. And then you start like Googling, how do you solve that problem? If you're in computer science, you can start on something like Figma. You can draw a chart, build a database, figure out how to connect the functions. And if it makes sense for you, then you can start Googling the next step. Okay, how do I build like a prototype? How do I learn React Native or something like that, and go on and build things like that? And if you put in 20 hours on each one of those topics, you will come up with an app. It may not look amazing, but you will have the functionality to try and see if it works. I'm going to answer that question. What do you think are the secrets behind getting to where you've got to? Is it hard work, luck, skills, passion? I think it's mostly luck. I'm just kidding. But a lot of it is luck. But luck it's a very tricky thing. It's like, if you think about luck as a potential factor, then you will probably not be successful, because successful people know they're lucky, but they don't rely on being lucky, if that makes sense. It's like you have to, the only things you can control is working hard. You can control learning skills. You can control what you do, but everything else, it's like you can create it. So for example, sometimes people would say, hey, how do you find investors? You're so lucky you met someone. But the truth is, there is a way. I actually have, let me see, I don't know if I can pull this up, but I have a very strategic way that I stay in touch. Oh, there it is. I'm not going to show you guys the whole thing, but on my iPad, every human I know is, oh, you can't see, but every human I know is in this database. And it shows where I met them, the topics that we talked about, when is the last time I talked to them, and how do I keep up with them. I have this thing for the last 5 years. And it sounds a little bit crazy to systemize relationships, but the truth is we forget who's in our lives. And when people say, hey, you're lucky that someone wants to invest in you, it's not, the luck is, yes, I am lucky, but it's also the 30, 40 hours every year or every month that I put in that says, remember to follow up with this person. Remember, hey, is there, like, I just read this book that's really interesting. Who can I send this to? And so I actually just did this thing where I sent 280 books to a class in a university because I thought that was a good idea, because that book was great. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to give back. And I kept building this relationship. And so luck is almost like the effort that you put in over the years, without really knowing, it's like giving without expectation in return. And luck is kind of a result of that. And I would say, like, you have to know yourself in terms of getting to where you are. One thing I've been thinking a lot about is that I am the best version of me when I'm creative. And so I'm trying to do more art. I'm trying to tell more stories. I'm trying to film more, take more pictures. Because when I go through that process of being creative, I usually find the best version of me, which hopefully is the creative one that can come up with the next idea that I want to do. And so that's the answer to that really long-winded question. Anybody else? Let's see. It's quiet. Okay, there's some I'm not going to read out, but let me give you an interesting story that I heard recently about standing out. I'm answering a question, kind of. So there's this guy, his name is James Altucher. He was like a Wall Street investor, and he wanted to learn he wanted to be a comedian. So he went to the comedy show and he told the people, hey, I'm James, can I go on stage and do comedy? And they say, hey, you're new, you have to start from the bottom. You have to do all these hours of comedy before you can go on the main stage. And he's like, well, I don't have all this time to do it. So I just want to do it for fun. And I want to see if I'm good enough. I don't want to do like 1,000 hours of comedy just to be able to try it. And so he came up, he actually wrote a book about this called Skip the Line. And his idea is that in every industry that's established, there is a way of learning things, but there's also a way of jumping. And the way you jump is you experiment. You try different things. You try, instead of saying, hey, I want to do comedy in this place, and I have to do 1,000 hours before I can do it. You can experiment crazy things, like you can go into the New York subway, which he did, or you can go into the LRT in KL or in KL, and just go in and start telling jokes and see if people laugh. And if people don't laugh, then maybe your joke is bad, or maybe they're just not the right audience, but you keep trying different things. And so what he did was he used this theory, and he now is learning chess. And so he's trying different things, because his idea is that when someone is doing something every day, for too long, they forget that there are other ways to do it. And so by you coming in and trying to do things differently, that's how you learn faster and you disrupt what is there. But the reason why I brought him up is because of this. So he has a daughter who is 18 years old, and his daughter is applying to university, and she didn't get in. She didn't get into all the major famous universities like Harvard and things like that. So he told her, well, you have good grades, you have all the right things on paper, but so does everybody else. And so what he did was he asked her, what is the craziest thing that you're interested in that you never thought about doing? And she told her dad, she's like, well, I want to drive a race car. I love cars. And so her dad's like, okay, why don't you spend the next year driving and just learning how to become a professional race car driver? And so she did. Of course, she's pretty rich, so she gets to take time 1 year to do this. And she drove and she went to all these racing events, and being the only girl at all the car shows, at all the racing events, she somehow found someone who coached her and let her drive. So 1 year later, she applied to all the universities again, same grades, same resume, same everything, except for now she's a professional race car driver. And she got into every single university. And so I think the story is kind of, it's basically my story. It's like, how do you just do what you're passionate about and make yourself different? Because in these days where everybody is smart on paper, smart on the resume, and have a lot of experience on the resume and have really good companies, the best thing you can do is to be different. Different is better than better. Does that make sense? I'm actually getting interesting feedback here. Okay, all right. What should I talk about next, Michael?
Well, I guess maybe Natalie can also, because quite a few of our audience today are actually doing software engineering, just like Natalie. So Natalie, maybe you can share with them, especially on JPL, since you have been JPL for the last 6 months. I mean, it's a dream place for many, many engineers. So maybe share with them, how is JPL, or what do you learn from JPL? I mean, you shared some, maybe a little bit more details to those who have never had a chance to actually work for JPL.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so JPL, it's a very unique place to work. There are 10 NASA centers across the United States, and JPL is responsible for building and maintaining robotic spacecraft that we send in various parts of our solar system to study and collect data. And it feels like being on an actual university campus. And we have about 6,700 employees and contractors who work for JPL. And it's so cool because it's such a collaborative environment. We're constantly learning something new, which is something that I talked about before. And that because of that variable of figuring out how to develop new software for spacecraft, how are we going to build this next mission, keeps you really engaged in the workplace. And I think that was the reason why I met so many employees who have been there for decades, because they're constantly being engaged with new information. And so JPL is such a special place. Even as somebody who hasn't worked anywhere else, this is my only reference point. But I gather all of that from senior engineers who work there, that it is truly spectacular, and it's truly an honor and a prestigious place to work for that. And that's my favorite part about it, is how collaborative it is.
Fantastic, Natalie. Jermaine, you also do a lot of voluntary work, right? From Rotary, Road Track, all the way to Rose Parade. Maybe you want to share some of this. How does it impact you in terms of your life journey so far?
Yeah, I think it's part of being interesting. It's part of my journey of being interesting. So I say that because when when I was pretty young, I had a job in my college, and they needed someone who spoke Mandarin to go to the local high schools to help them apply for scholarship money. And so what happened was they paid me to go to all these high school and speak to the students, speak to the family. And from there, I realized I have this skills of talking to people. And since then, I joined a nonprofit called Rotary. We're one of the largest. If you've heard of Interact Club in high school, that's part of Rotary's thing. And I think most of my relationships have come from something to do with giving. For example, the way I connected with the state treasurer's office was because I was a part of this group called Rotary, and he was a speaker at our lunch, and then I met his chief of staff or deputy chief of staff. We stayed in touch, and that's how I really got a job eventually with him. And so what Rotary does is that 20 years ago, there's this problem in Chicago, where in downtown Chicago, the business owners were wondering, why are there no people hanging out in the weekends? And what they realized was nobody hung out in downtown Chicago because there's no toilets. There's no public toilets. And so people cannot spend more time there. And so these four businessmen decided to put their money and influence together to build public toilets. And so that's how Rotary started. It's the idea that in every community, every city, every town, there are people who care about this place, and they have money and influence, and they can come together and do something good for the community. And so I've been part of this group for many years. And in the past 10 years, I think I've traveled to maybe 23 countries now to speak about the work that we do, membership, and how do we recruit, and why people give, and why people give back. And so I haven't talked about this in a long time. It's sometimes weird talking about giving back because it's like you're publicizing that you're doing good, which defeats the purpose of just doing good. But for example, some of the projects that I've done lately, we've given thousands, 2,000 specifically, wheelchairs to orphanages. We funded a center in Mexico where women were abused by their husbands and they have nowhere to go. We've been doing that. We just gave away toys to a few thousand kids in LA, kids that wouldn't have a Christmas if it wasn't for this program. We give away free glasses to people that cannot read and cannot afford sunglasses. And we've built things like water dam in Myanmar. So we do a lot of things like that. Actually, I can't even remember everything that I've done. But funny enough, a good story here. In 2014, I went to Colombia, the country, and I went there with Rotary, and we were building up a medical center for a little village. And because of that trip, I met someone that now I'm talking to about a startup who just raised $40 million. And so it's because of our connection that we are both giving that I think it filters the kind of people that I would meet when I go to these countries. And so for me, that's my part of being interesting in, like, how do I connect with people, usually through giving or my love of food, of taking pictures of all the food I eat onto an Instagram account, or something like photography. And so my networking is like, instead of going to someone and say, hey, what do you do? Can you give me a job? My networking is usually like, here we are building a house together in Mexico, and then we become friends. And that person, because also have the same kind of interest in what they do on the weekends, we connected at a very human level. And so, yeah, I actually should be thinking about better ways to talk about giving, but maybe you guys can give me advice if that sounds like weird to talk about.
Awesome, Jermaine. I guess you have both perspective. I mean, being grown up in Malaysia and yeah, towards the later part of your high school years, you quote unquote, yeah, you went you went back to the US to complete your high school. What advice or what I guess perspective would you give to most of the Malaysians youth here? How can they break away or break through like what you've done for your life and for yourself?
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the question that someone just posted onto the chat. Um, and the question is, what would you be doing if you were me or slash us? And age is a really interesting thing. I definitely feel I just turned 30 last month, and I was thinking about this, and I've been telling everybody that at 30, I feel younger than I was at 22, because at 30, I feel like I know my potential opportunities, and I feel like I know who I am. But at 22, 25, I think I was chasing the validation of maybe society. I was chasing the validation of people saying, "Oh, you're good. He's good." And it's funny because I wasn't kidding when I say at 22 I thought 30 was done. It's so old. And I was like, well, if I don't have my life figured out by 30, I would be such a failure. But now I realize that, of course, there's no way for you to know. So to answer that question, what would I do if I were you? If I could go back to being 18, 19, I think I would do somewhat what Natalie did which is to have more fun. I worked a lot. I worked maybe 70, 80 hours or more a week. For about 18 months, my schedule was wake up at 5 a.m., drive for Uber for 4 hours, go build a startup for 8 hours, and then drive another 4 hours and then go to sleep. And I did that almost every day. And so I think I didn't have any fun, which is I worked so much that my ex-girlfriend basically left me. So it's not the best thing, but now that I have that experience, it's great. But if I were you, I would spend all my possible extra time. I would take care of what I have to do first. So if you are in college, I think you owe it to yourself to keep going and try to do the best that you can. But what you realize is you have a lot of extra spare time. College, or even if you work, it's just maybe 10 hours. And if you really don't watch YouTube and stop looking at TikTok, you have a lot of time. Spend the rest of those time really looking at things that are interesting to you. One thing that I've been asking to all my friends is there something that you're really interested in that I don't know about? And then my friends would tell me, hey, you should check out this. This is kind of interesting. And I've never heard of it. And so the most recent one is ghost kitchens. So kitchens that pop up that allows for restaurants to quickly operate and then convert it back into a truck, and then they go somewhere else. So I've been learning a lot of interesting things. And I think if I were 18 again, I wouldn't spend any money on things that don't matter. I spent a lot of money on stupid things. Like I always had the newest computer, newest everything. Actually, funny, I just bought a new computer today and I'm using it to be on this call right now. So, but I would probably be smarter with my money and not impress people that I don't care about. And then second is I would do my best to learn every single thing possible. And third, I would find the oldest people you know and talk to them. Now that you're 90 years old, what about your life that you feel like you should do more? I had this conversation with my grandmother who lives in Saramban. I asked her about the first time she realized she loved my grandfather and about these questions. And it gives you perspective, because someone at 90 years old thinks that their life is pretty much done. And when they look back, you can really see what really matters. because at 18 and 19, it's really hard for you to understand what it's like to be done with life. Like you feel like you have unlimited time, which I still feel like I have unlimited time. But I think if you're able to even get to a little bit of the perspective of someone who's older, you will really learn how to appreciate life more. And that's something that I've been doing a lot. I'm living with my parents right now after living in New York and Mexico, so I can spend more time with them. So let's see. Okay, there's a question, things you need to do or things you like to do, how to choose. So there's a practical side of things you need to do. If you need to pay the bills, you have to work. You have to, we are all part of a society. You cannot, unless you have really rich parents, then maybe you can. But for the most of us, if you have to do what is practical, you have to do it. So I didn't like doing Uber. As much as I like meeting people, I didn't like waking up at 5 o'clock to drive. But I had to do it because I needed the money to be able to build my startup. And the truth is, I actually never talked about this part of me driving Uber for all these years, because it was something that I wasn't really proud of, because most of my friends were able to just raise money or somehow find money. But it wasn't until maybe 2 years ago that I started telling people that, hey, I know why. I hired someone and we paid her a lot of money to live in New York. And she said, oh my gosh, can you imagine living in New York with this little pay? And I said, yeah, I used to live in LA and drive Uber 40 hours a week just to pay my bills. So I understand. And then I realized, oh, okay, it's actually really helpful that the CEO has once done the job that the people think that I wouldn't do, because then I tell them, hey, maybe you should work harder and stop buying expensive coffee or something. They would understand that I've done that. And so things you need to do and things you like to do, if you have a choice, you're in a great position. Then you should probably do the things you like to do. But if you don't have a choice, then do the things you need to do first, but find a place to do. Yeah, it's true. You have to do the things you need to do first. Okay. I'm kind of curious. How many of you here play games? Because my little brother is like computer science, kind of mechanical engineering, but plays games. I feel like I had this conversation with my little brother. He's 20 years old, and he told me 2 months ago, he said, hey, 2 years ago, if I kept playing games, I think I would be I could potentially be like an esport player, like a professional esport player. And I told him, I think I told him I'm sorry that I failed him, because if he told me that, I should have respected what he told me and said, okay, let's take 1 year off from college and just play games. Because if you are that good, you should do it. And so now I have a kind of a promise with my brother that if he feels like he's good enough to be an professional esports player, then you should do it. Because who am I to say you cannot be? And what do you mean by anything is impossible? Can you explain in the chat? Sorry. While this person's explaining, yeah. Natalie, do you have a question for me?
Where did you get your love of travel from? Because I'm personally, for me, I'm so inspired by how many countries you've been to. You inspire me to travel more. Where were the roots for that? How did you get there?
Yeah, actually, it's always been the people. As Natalie knows this because she follows me on Instagram, but wherever I go, I end up connecting with the people. So when COVID happened, I moved to Mexico and I became friends with the locals, and we, I just always so inspired by the perspective. So this is the 17th of December last year today. I left. I had an apartment in Mexico, and we had a cleaning lady. She comes and clean the whole apartment twice a week. And I've got to know her. She's a grandma. She's maybe 70 years old. And I asked her in my really bad Spanish, why do you still work? Because you're 70, you have 3 kids. And she told me that it's because her daughter just had a baby. And because of just COVID, she doesn't want her daughter to work. So she's working. And I got to know them. Margarita, she's like, she's super nice. She always takes care of everything that I do. During Christmas, I gave her a gift that is basically multiple months of her pay, so she doesn't have to work anymore. And when I came back to the apartment, she left most of the money. She didn't take it because she said that it was too much and she needed to earn it. And it's like, this is why I travel. It's because I get the perspective of how someone like her who has so little can be so generous. She actually told me to go give it to somebody else or to share it, but I didn't understand that until later on because my Spanish was so bad. But I think that's why I travel. It's like, I think the more you are able to travel, the more you get to see that like humanity is kind of the same everywhere. Like everybody cares about the same things, whether you feel loved, feel connected in your community, can you do meaningful work? I think that's kind of what keeps me going and what's drawing me to Africa, because we don't understand Africa. I don't understand Africa. It's scary. And that's why I'm really curious about it. Yeah, Natalie should travel. By the way, if you all have a Malaysian passport, it's a great passport to travel because you don't need visa for most countries. I'm a little jealous because I have to pay for visas most places I go. The thing, I'm going to respond to the comment now. Anything is possible is the way we should live. And I think being a realistic person, you would say, well, of course, everything is possible. He's in the United States, he's in California, and all these things. And I do think that I think the way I think about it is like, what is the alternative? Because, it's like, if you don't believe that everything is possible, then what are you believing in? And in fact, for many years, I have a quote in my office that says, something good is about to happen. And so that quote lives in the top of our startup because we were having such bad days, month after month, weeks after weeks, that we just have no good luck with anything. But I needed everyone to believe that something good is about to happen. And so we try to convince each other, sometimes a little bit disillusioned, that something good is about to happen. So we have to keep going. And I think that's the same thing as like the anything is possible mindset. But anything is possible requires strategic thinking and strategic actions. So when I went to New York, I made a list of everybody that I knew or everybody I knew that knew somebody in New York. And I reached out to everybody. I asked everybody for referrals, for potential investors, for jobs, for anything that's interesting. And maybe 70% of the people either didn't respond or didn't help. And when something like that happens, it's kind of sad. It's like you feel let down. But one thing you realize is like, it's like you have to put yourself in their shoes. And when people let you down, you have to think like, well, you don't know the full story about what they're going through. Why couldn't they help you? And so you become more empathetic to it. I realize I should stop talking and reading the comments at the same time. I get distracted with what I'm about to say. Okay. I have a really interesting feeling about procrastination. Do you think you're procrastinating because you feel insecure about the work that you're doing? Or because I think procrastination is it's like a form of insecurity about the work. So like you don't want to face what you're doing. And if you're in school, I get it. You have to do some things that you don't want to do. But at work, I'm going to give you one really good example. I procrastinated telling that employee that I needed to fire for a very long time. She was doing really bad work, and I didn't tell her that she was doing bad work. And because I didn't want to do that. I felt so insecure, uncomfortable about it. So I put it off for 3 weeks. And then I was like, okay, I really need to fire her now. Otherwise, I would have to pay her again for one more month. And I finally did it. And she's like, wow, you should have told me that you were so unhappy about my work. At least I could have changed, or at least I could have tried to change, instead of just suddenly like this came out of nowhere. And so that was one of the biggest fail that I have, I think, in growing into being a leader, is to understand why I procrastinate on things and to get better at it. And let's see. Yeah. With fear, it's really interesting because I've read recently, I just finished reading the Will Smith biography, and you guys should all know Will Smith. He's kind of a famous actor. I just finished reading his book, and his book talks about fear. It talks about what's on the other side of fear is a great experience and potentially a great life. And he talks about how our fear informs our insecurities, and that in turn informs our desires, and that inform our actions. And so in this case, if you're procrastinating something because of somebody's judgment of what you do, your actions will reflect in not doing it. And so I think the self-awareness to know that you're afraid of something is a really good start. And then you start asking yourself, why do you fear this? And you start asking yourself 3 times why. Like, why do I fear this? Oh, because this person's opinion. Why do I fear this person's opinion? And then validation. You guys hear me?
Yes.
You guys hear me?
A little. It's a little muffled.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Right.
Yes.
Sorry, I went to my AirPods for some weird reason. But yeah, I would have a deep dive with yourself and ask yourself why at least 3 times, 3 layers into it. Why am I doing this? Why am I not doing this? Because I fear someone's opinion. Why do I fear someone's opinion? Because of something. And then you get to that part of it. And then maybe if you have that relationship with your supervisor, you can say, hey, I realize that I'm holding back on this project because I'm concerned that I won't be able to fulfill your expectations. So maybe if you can help me clarify your expectations and something like that, it would help me take action. So start asking those questions. I hope that's helpful. It's a very vague topic that I tried to find an example.
Jermaine, maybe I can ask questions to Natalie. So Natalie, for JPL, do you take international, I guess, interns, or do you take, I guess, the employees from different countries without being American citizens?
That is a great question. I'm not an expert, of course, but what I do know,
Sure.
for my experience as a summer intern, actually one of the students that I worked with, he was not an American citizen, so it's not a requirement. I believe at this time, they require documentation. I believe he was on a green card.
Right.
So that's pretty much all I know about that. There could also be other avenues for that as well. I'm going to do some more research on that, and I think somehow if I can convey that back to the group, perhaps through Jermaine, once I find out more, I would be more than happy to do that for the group.
That'll be awesome. Yeah. Thank you so
There's
much.
there's
Absolutely.
actually a number of Malaysians working in NASA and JPL. They went to Caltech and then they got a special visa to stay. So I can ask them, and then maybe I can introduce them to you, and then see if they want to stay connected.
Right. That'll be fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
know a lot of Malaysians in tech in Silicon Valley, actually. A lot of Malaysians in Facebook or Meta.
oh, great. I guess there'll be I guess, inspiration for a lot of Malaysians who are thinking about be able to venture to the Silicon Valley. I think that will be a good inspirations for them as well. So Jermaine and Natalie, same thing, yeah. If you have anything that can help, I guess, some of Malaysians' youth to be able to venture out of Malaysia, I think that would be truly appreciated.
Yeah,
And Natalie, same thing, yeah. I guess if you have a chance, hopefully one day after when the COVID is over, when Jermaine comes back to visit Malaysia, you can come with him. We'll
That would be
we'll
fantastic.
yeah, we'll be very happy to host you and Jermaine, definitely. Yeah.
I just say
Wonderful.
no to
Thank you.
traveling with Natalie. I'm kidding. There's a question in the chat. I'm not sure. How do I spend my holidays? I usually work every holiday, so I don't know what to do. But don't be like me. Spend it with your family or however you want to. Yeah, that's such a bad answer. But I usually work, which is a problem. I work too much, I think.
Jermaine, I also remember you were telling me when we met in New York City about a month ago, you were telling me that there's a lot of opportunities for young people nowadays, no matter where they are, because of internet, right? I mean, they don't have to be physically in Silicon Valley or in the US to do something great. Maybe you can expand on that and share with some of our friends here.
Yeah. Now, I think more than ever before, one of the best things about being in Malaysia is that you get to see what happened in the US, and then in a few months it happens in the rest of the world. So all the technology that we have, let's just say Google ads, Facebook ads is a great example. The trend of all these things starts in the Silicon Valley, and then they go to New York, and then they go to middle of America. And then what happens is they start going to Europe and they go to Asia. So that's the beauty of the internet right now, is that if you see like a cool idea that's happening in the US, and you can do that by subscribing to really any of the US tech news. And I can try to find a list of them and send it to you guys. And you can say, oh, that idea is cool in the US. Maybe I can do that in Malaysia. and what happens is probably nobody has built it in Malaysia yet. And so you can jump ahead. But what is even more interesting is once you start proving that you can see that, you can do things like that, or you have even a vision, you can start approaching US companies, especially because of COVID. We don't really care where we hire anymore, as long as you're willing to work any hours that make sense. So thanks to COVID, most people I know in tech are working half-time at home. And so they're moving to places that are not Silicon Valley. I moved to Mexico, and there's a lot of people like me in Mexico because it's nice. And so you don't have to really physically be in the US. But I would say the best thing you can do usually to get jobs in tech is to have sample of what you have done. This is something that is, I always describe to people that, you can read all the books about how to swim, but if you never jump in the pool, you will never really know if you can swim. And so if you think about that in the sense of coding or everything that you do. You can read and listen all about coding and learn all about startups, but if you never try to do it or try to do a project yourself, you will really, it's really hard for someone like me to say, oh, your code is clean. I can see how you fit into my team. But if you have that, then you set yourself apart from everybody else. And I can tell you, most people don't do that, because I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people for jobs, and they have zero, most people just do what is like the average, which is send out your resume, ask people for referral, things like that. But if you do one step more, just one step more, you would be much way ahead of most people. Oh, my vision for the future. That's a great question. World peace. We go to Mars, and we have enough resources for everybody. I'm kidding. Actually, the vision, unfortunately, is very difficult, right? It's like, the truth is the world is running too hot. Climate change is going to be a real challenge. People, because of climate change, poor places will be hit the hardest. These are all really serious challenge, and that's why we need people from all different cultures and perspective to build things. Like, all of you, if you have an idea, it should be tested. We should all try your ideas, because nobody knows what and who will invent the next thing that can solve and reduce climate or something like that. And so you never know. And I would say, because everybody is looking at the US and at all these Western countries for innovation, people don't realize that, it's easier for you to build something really cool and get the attention of US. Look, you guys should, I'm going to type it out. You guys should check out this company called Y Combinator. This Y Combinator is like it's what we call an incubator. It's when you have an idea, you go to them, you pitch your idea to them, and they give you, it's like a boot camp. They teach you how to write a business plan, they teach you how to get money, and then if you are able to come up with a good, like, solid concept in 8 weeks, I think 8 weeks, yeah, and you pitch to them, they will give you money to try to pursue your goals. The cool thing about this now is, until last year, Y Combinator requires you to fly to California to pitch them. But because of COVID, now you can pitch them from Malaysia. You can start literally anywhere. So you have a good idea. And I don't think there's a single Y Combinator company from Malaysia yet. And so that would set you apart if you have a good idea. And the only way to know is just to try. Natalie, what do you want to do more in your future?
I think we already talked about this a little bit. I would love to travel more in the future. I've been to 4 countries, excluding the US, of course. I've been to Europe, but I would love to go to many more places. I keep a journal of where I'd like to go, and it keeps growing and growing. So because of the pandemic, of course, that put a limit on where we can go, but now that we're coming out of that, my desire to travel is even stronger. So that would be traveling for me.
Excellent. Natalie, do you have a chance for JPL, do you all work with the SpaceX of the world?
There are
Oh,
many, the SpaceX minds of the world.
all right.
There are so many brilliant engineers and IT professionals, business administrators, finance folks. I mean, these are truly people that are wonderful. I consider them the smartest minds in the world. Of course, I'm a little biased, but everyone, and it stems from the fact that everyone who is there is passionate about science and exploration and knowledge discovery. I think that's where it all comes from. and it really excites us, and so that's why I think we're able to harness that passion, and why our work reflects that as well.
Wonderful. Yeah. Jermaine, is anything else you want to add? Because it's already 12 to 30, 36. I don't want to keep your, I know it's, what time is it in California time right now?
It's
It's about,
8:30 in
it's,
California. Yeah,
all
it's
right.
no, it's I think I'm good. I think I haven't done one of these talks with students in a long time. It's actually kind of fun. It's less pressure, I think. I wanted to have a conversation, but I think it's hard to have a conversation with 94 people. So
Yeah, in fact, we have a few on YouTube as well because it's overflow. So we have a few actually on YouTube live watching you as well.
nice.
All right. All right. Anyone have any more questions? If not, I'll pass it back to Danny because I don't want to hold Jermaine and Natalie for too long. Back to you, Danny. I think
Okay,
there's
no
one more
problem.
question, is there? Yeah.
I did see a question. What are the challenges that I face at JPL, and how do I overcome? For me, looking at the first 6 months of my career, the biggest challenge is the learning curve. Like I said, even though university teaches you the building blocks of what you need to know, I was a computer science major, so naturally I was building my software engineering skills. But the biggest challenge is learning new technologies, and the way you overcome them is being transparent with my mentor. If I need to have something clarified that I don't understand, I'm never afraid to ask. And a lot of the tools and the logic, the engineering behind what we do, a lot of those mechanisms, I guess I could say, is always going to be on Google or YouTube. That is something that is so powerful. And we already talked about this, actually. It did come up before. And my dad even mentions this as well. My dad was also a software engineer. And he said in the 80s and 90s, we could not Google how to fix a problem. You had to ask somebody who knew how to do it. So the fact that we have these tools at our disposal to solve these problems has made any issue I have with grasping an idea or understanding it to be able to overcome that.
Natalie's so well spoken.
Yeah.
She's so articulate.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've gotten
Well,
practice.
all right, back to you, Danny.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Jermaine and Miss Natalie, for such a wonderful and insightful sharing. Let's have another round of applause for the sharing given by Mr. Jermaine and Miss Natalie. So now I will proceed to the QR code, the survey session. So everyone, you can use your phone to scan the QR code as shown in your screen right now to fill in just a quick survey form to leave us some feedback so that we could improve your webinar experience better in the future. Your feedback really matters to us, so we hope you don't mind giving us your cooperation and taking your time in filling this survey form, as it should only take you about 1 minute. And also, you will be eligible to receive an e-certificate from us for those who have filled out the survey. Thank you so much. Okay, so hopefully today all of you have known and learned a lot from our webinar session. Now, we know this could be hard for some people, but we would like to invite all the participants to switch on your camera just for a few minutes so that we could have a group photo session together. I know some people might be shy, but don't worry about it. It is not the end of the world and we are not going to do anything illegal whatsoever. So everyone, please smile and show your bright teeth to us.
Yes, let's go. I will take the screenshot. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Okay. Okay, done. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Locke. And thank you, audience, for the cooperation. You may now turn off your camera. Thank you so much. Before we send things off, we would like to also invite all the participants to come and join us for the upcoming Information Technology Virtual Career Fair 2022. As the name implies, this virtual career fair is targeting the students that are interested and looking for an IT-based company to work in. This is a great opportunity for fresh graduates or interns to gain experience in the IT field. For 3 days, on 7 to 9 January 2022, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Don't miss this opportunity and register now using the QR code or the link given in the chat room. Last and foremost, thank you all for joining us this morning. We hope you have enjoyed our webinar as much as we have enjoyed hosting this webinar for you. Before the session ends, please do not forget to join us on the Global Talent Network GTN Telegram group with the QR code that have been provided by our team. And also for those who have not filled out the survey yet, kindly use the QR code to scan it and you will be rewarded with an e-certificate after this. Lastly, we sincerely hope that we can see you in the upcoming Information Technology Virtual Career Fair. Now, just enjoy your weekend and have a nice day. Thank you. Terima kasih. Goodbye.
Thank you, Jermaine. Thank you, Natalie, and thank you, Danny. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm alone, I'm a broken home. I gave you all the bricks that I own and know. I'm letting go, I'm breaking these walls down, breaking these walls down. If you want adventure, then fly to home. But if you wanna travel, then go alone. Yeah, what's the point in us if I never know? Yeah, if you're gonna leave, I'ma let you go. I'm tired of the pain. Go away. I'm tired of yesterday. is what I tell myself, so I could feel something else. Yeah, I guess I had my bad days, but it doesn't mean I lost my style. Darling, where were you when my heart was